4K Blu-rays. You love them, I love them. You know me, I will be the first to shout its praisals, but I'll be also the first one to shit on it. It's kind of like the saying, no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. It's kind of in that same boat. When I talk about a certain bad transfer or a certain bad remaster or restoration, they assume that all 4Ks are like that, and it's not the case whatsoever. So I want to take you back. Let's talk about the most disappointing 4K Blu-rays, ones that you should stay away from. Let's talk about it. So some of these aren't actually terrible 4K Blu-rays, but they lack that 4K oomph to when if you try to show someone who've never seen a 4K Blu-ray and they've only used Blu-ray and they watch that, they're like, I don't get it, what's the hype? These are basically those titles. Starting off with is Crank on 4K Blu-ray. I don't really know what I expected from this film. It was made on digital cameras ranging from as low as 480p to 1080p. But honestly, when I watched that original 2007-2008 Blu-ray, it honestly looks really good there. So I don't know, I kind of felt like with the added HDR, maybe a new restoration, something like that, who knows, it'll look better on 4K. But no, not really. Because honestly, this is a painfully average 4K Blu-ray, and it fails to really honestly impress most 4K enthusiasts and fans of the brilliant high-octane action Statham classic. The HDR, honestly, what I thought was going to help it was what actually kills it in the end of the day. It seems like the editor took the saturation tool and just increased it to the nth degree. And while it does result in some pretty impressive white levels, it honestly ruins any semblance of skin tone. Everyone looks like a freaking lobster. Jason Statham looks like he went to the beach, a long day at the beach, forgot to bring his sunscreen, and just went on the set of Crank. It looks terrible. You know, the overall boost in vibrancy can add to the lunacy of the film, but for those expecting a good-looking 4K Blu-ray, this is not it, as it honestly barely looks like an upgrade. I mean, when it comes to audio, the 6.1 track is fantastic, so if you mainly care for the audio, this might not be as disappointing as those who add more weight to the visuals. Alright, next is one of the most disappointing 4Ks in my collection, and that is the 2010 Ridley Scott box office bomb, Robin Hood. Now, this had every single advantage for this to be a demo-worthy 4K. We got a movie filmed in 2010 with high-quality 35mm film with the amazing attention to detail from Ridley Scott with a 4K digital intermediate. It really leaves you thinking, like, did I pop in the 4K? Because it looks like a Blu-ray. This genuinely feels like they took the Blu-ray, exported it onto 4K, slapped the logo on it without going through the effort of actually doing any kind of like restoration or remastering. The image at points can look fantastic, you know, giving the credit it kind of deserves, but for the most part, it can look downright disgusting. Also, for grain haters, this is an immediate skip. For a film made in 2010, I was not expecting it to be as harsh with the grain as it ended up turning out to be. At points, it can look extremely noisy and terrible. And while the sharpness, again, is great, the standard Blu-ray also looks fantastic. But the most disappointing of them all is the lackluster HDR10 passover, as colors don't look to have been upgraded whatsoever when it comes to things such as skin complexions. I will give it to them, the HDR has made the increase in contrast, did make it look brighter, as the standard Blu-ray does look pretty dark. So this HDR 4K does increase that brightness, giving it a bit more detail when it comes to the picture. But I guess at the end of the day, if you pay next to nothing, it wouldn't be as disappointing. But for those who bought this day one for $30, F's in chat, guys. F's in chat. And then the audio itself is actually really good. It's just the fact that it's the same kind of audio track from the standard Blu-ray, which doesn't really give that sense of, oh, I need to upgrade this. I need to spend $30 on 4K when I can easily spend like literally a 16th of that for the standard Blu-ray. This is honestly really disappointing. Shame on you. Now, next is a film that really disappointed me, because The other movies in this franchise look pretty good on 4K. That is Solo, a Star Wars story. Yeah, this really disappointed me because the lineup of modern day Star Wars films on 4K have looked outstanding. So I don't know what went wrong here, because this was filmed in 6.5K with a 4K digital intermediate. I thought this was a surefire hit. And while there are plenty instances of fantastic sharpness, there are also many shots that are soft and downright out of focus. And that might actually be more on the actual filming techniques and the actual source material as opposed to the 4K Blu-ray. Honestly, the main problem with this 4K being its HDR and the poor brightness levels, really heavily muted, dull and dark gray that still crushes detail. Shadows are just mushy. You can't really tell the details within shadows, which ruins detail. It's really, the shadows are murky and they're dreary, and it often consumes a lot of the detail, which make for a poor and pretty flat looking image. Also, not to mention the audio, the lackluster surround sound is just outright unacceptable for a high-budget movie made in 2018, making this easily the worst 4K out of the modern era. Things like, Force Awakens to Last Jedi, all those kind of things. All those movies, this is definitely the lowest on that list. Let's talk about the hands down most disappointing 4K Blu-ray I have ever seen, and that is the original 4K release for Halloween, released by Lionsgate, because this transfer honestly always intrigued me, because I remember when that first, when the Scream Factory releases started coming out, those first, Halloween 1 to 5, when that came out, a lot of people were skipping Halloween 1 because they were like, oh, I already own it from the Lionsgate transfer. I already owned it from the 2018 4K. Which honestly, I can understand, being that the new 4Ks were a boutique release, they're pretty expensive, being at like $35. I can see why, on the surface level, why someone wouldn't want to buy it in the first place. So once I found it for pretty cheap, I decided to check it out for myself in the name of science, in the name of 4K science. And the first thing I noticed was that it was quite bland and weak. When it comes to the contrast levels, granted, the whites, they look pretty good, but they all fall really on the lower end of the gray scale, meaning the whites aren't as white, like pure white. It has more of a grayish overtone to it, which is kind of a bad thing when it gives daylight sequences this kind of lifeless, overcast feeling. While there is Dolby Vision, it feels like it's just really a keyword to make us 4K nerds buy it day one, as really this really affects a lot of the colors, which makes the skin tones, obviously it's a slasher film, but everyone looks dead before they're even killed. You really miss those reddish hues that are sadly missed as compared to these new Scream Factory 4Ks. This Lionsgate 4K really fails to impress me, especially coming from the demo-worthy Scream Factory 4K release. But even on a technical level, there were countless sequences of aliasing that really made it look like an old Blu-ray. The audio itself is fine, but it leaves more to desire, especially in the mid-range, which lacks a real sense of range, like stereoscopic range or whatever. Also, the lack of that OG mono track, the looseless mono track from the 1970s, which is proudly portrayed in the Scream Factory edition, makes it a no-brainer for you to honestly upgrade to that 2021 4K. For those who are on the fence, don't get off that fence. And honestly, if you're even a slight fan of horror or slasher films or Halloween specifically, this is definitely an upgrade. If you own that 4K from 2018 from Lionsgate, that's extremely disappointing, especially in comparison to this new Scream Factory 4K, because the Factory is honestly, it's a clear winner. The new 4K transfer from the original camera negatives, the many audio options, including the original theatrical looseless mono track, as well as the abundance of special features. Because when you're looking at the special features on that Lionsgate 4K, literally nothing. It's the exact same from the 35th anniversary edition, and a lot of people were complaining about that 35th anniversary edition Blu-ray being that there was literally nothing. I guess maybe a couple featurettes and audio commentary, But if you're a fan of the movie and if you're a fan of horror, you owe it to yourself to buy the Scream Factory version, because at the end of the day, it's also really cheap nowadays. You can find it for 20 bucks and under. So those were the most disappointing 4K Blu-rays. Some of these may not even be terrible, but they really lack that oomph. They lack that 4K quality, which made me fall in love with 4K in the first place. So those are just my opinions. If you have other disappointing 4Ks where you're really excited for, you're like, yeah, I can't wait for this movie to come out, you buy it blindly because you're a genuine fan of the movie itself and you know that 4K can look fantastic. You buy it maybe even $30, $40, you pop it in the player, and then you're like, is this the Blu-ray? Is this the 4K? That's like one of the worst feelings ever, because it's not even, at points it can feel worse than when you buy a bad 4K, because when you buy a bad 4K, it's like, okay, they messed up on the restoration, they messed up on the encoding, that's probably why. But when it's like a lackluster, disappointing transfer where it's like, you know, like it's worse when you're like when your dad or your parents yell at you or your significant other yells at you, it's like, whatever, I know I did wrong, blah, blah, blah. But when they're like, I'm not mad at you, I'm disappointed, that hurts the most. So that was a list of more disappointing 4K Blu-rays in my collection. Again, if you have some that I missed out on, leave it down in the comments down below. Some hot takes, because I know a lot of people don't like Edge of Darkness. I heard, I made a Reddit post. Some people were saying like Edge of Tomorrow wasn't very good. Same with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, those kind of things. So again, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I've been Mason from the Mockbuster YouTube channel. Please have yourself a good day, night, evening, afternoon, morning, whenever you're watching this. Please stay safe and God bless. Again, thank you so much for watching this video. See you guys next time on another episode of the Mockbuster. See you guys. Have a good one.